Have you ever looked at someone who is a corporate practitioner or a business owner and was curious about their journey, what they've experienced, their passion projects, and the practices that have helped them be successful in their work? The Formula xChange podcast is the place where the inner genius of our guest meets your curiosity. Our podcast episodes are quick chats geared towards revealing the person behind the LinkedIn profile. You'll quickly discover and learn about their journey, what they're doing, and our guest will leave you with a formula to help you conquer your next. I'm your host, Dr. Lenny Cook. Our next guest works for Empire Candle Company located in Kansas City, Kansas. Empire Candle is one of the largest candle manufacturers in the United States, focusing mainly on container-filled candles. Tuscany Candle is the largest and main brand that they produce in Kansas City. And our guest is a part of the operations team overseeing production, supply chain, quality assurance, and maintenance and engineering. In this podcast episode, our guest, David Lee, will discuss the opportunity that every single person has to better themselves and how that can affect positive change, not in just themselves, but also within their circle of influence, especially within their work environment. Hey, David, how are you? How's it going?
Doing well. How are you, Lynn?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So, just so that we can bring our audience, the Formula xChange audience, up to speed with who you are, can you briefly tell me about your journey and how you've come to do what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll go all the way back to right after graduation. I have a degree in biology and thought that I was going to rid the world of all the ailments and diseases, and overzealous new graduate, thinking that I was going to save the world. Uh, Started putting my resume out there, and the first one that hit was for a candle company, and more specifically, it was to do research and development in their alternative fuels department. Thought to myself, what is this? Like candles? Like I didn't go to school to go make candles. So fast forward, got the job, fell in love with the industry, loved the people I worked with at my company, which was in Chicago, the Chicagoland area, the western suburbs of Chicago to be exact, a place called Batavia, and got recruited down to Kansas City to work for a company called Empire Candle, and that was about 10 years ago. And the ownership wanted to really develop an R&D facility, a technical services department, to make sure that we can make a good candle in manufacturing, but how much of the safety and performance is thought about during the development phase, the research and development phase. So I started up the lab here about 10 years ago, and then inherited production, and then inherited all of operations several years ago. So my job right now is to support the operations team. Have a wonderful team that heads up the four main departments that encompasses operations, which is supply chain and maintenance engineering, technical services, and then obviously manufacturing production, as we call it in-house. So that's kind of been my candle journey. And I think specifically what we wanted to discuss today was my leadership journey, and I guess the aha moment. And that the first, I would say, 6 to 8 years of my career here at Empire, I was more concerned about building the company, making sure that we can support the growth, right? That it's sustainable, that we have the right foundation. As the pieces started falling in place, and the more, I guess, I wanted to better myself. So my journey really started with self-improvement. What can I control? How can I be more of a value, not just at Empire, but also in my personal life? So I started reading a lot more during the pandemic shutdown in 2020. So reading books like Think Again by Adam Grant, and The Attributes by Rich Diviney, and really started on the psychology side with Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, and still trying to get through his second book, The 12 More Rules, which it takes a long time to read because he's just so cerebral, and it's a lot of looking up words that I don't know. So the self-improvement journey really showed me that I can be better, but also how can I now use the resources I have that I'm fortunate to have to give back to our people. And I deeply feel that my aha moment really was, if you take care of your people will take care of you. And I'm sure you've heard that or seen that in from other entrepreneurs or other businessmen, or just quotes like on social media. But it's one thing to say things like that, but it's a totally different thing to really feel that. And the last, I would say, 18 months has been, how can we continue to give back and make sure that our people feel like they're cared for. So the last 18 months have been a lot of fun to try to give back to our employees. So that's kind of been my journey, my 5-minute quick summary journey.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for those 3 books that you just dropped. So now I'm going to add that
Uh-huh.
to my reading list.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll share it with the audience as well, the list, so that
sure.
they can follow up as well.
Yeah,
So,
and another one that's really great, that goes in line with taking care of your people,
mm,
is Everybody Matters,
mm,
by it's a gentleman by the name of Bob Chapman, who is the CEO of Barry Waymiller. It's an equipment manufacturer out of St. Louis, Missouri.
mm.
And then they broke off a consulting group that is like leadership consulting, called Chapman and Co. And they are also out of St. Louis. So Everybody Matters is a great one by Bob Chapman.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for this. These are
Yeah, you're
gems,
welcome.
and that's why we have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because it really kind of pushes. Not only does it create a conversation, but it creates a pathway so that we can grow and evolve as practitioners, or
Yep.
business owners or whatnot. So for yourself, I know a big part of your shift in leadership has been just kind of being, a little bit more internal and turning within, and,
Hmm.
making the commitment for personal growth and transformation.
Hmm.
What else has helped you be successful in leadership?
Yeah, I would say one of the things I've heard a saying that the closest thing to leadership is parenthood, being a
Mm,
parent. And I have 2 daughters, and as they've been growing, I have found that my personal growth and my professional growth almost are mirror images of each other. And I came to the conclusion that bettering myself is not just going to be better for my people at work, but also for my family, and in particular my kids. And setting the right example, being the right role model for them. Because I tell my kids all the time, the thing that I want most from you guys is that I want to see you guys grow up to be good human beings. And that is ultimately what I want to see from you guys. Yeah, you're going to have rough patches. We're going to argue, right? There's going to be growing pains, but ultimately, when you hit adulthood, that is the goal, is for you to be kind and to be good human beings. And I see that even at work. And unfortunately, they're not children anymore, right? They're adults. Our team members here at Empire. So we can't really get to them at an earlier stage, which tends to be a little bit easier when you can get to people a little bit at a younger age, to give them a little bit more time. A lot of times adults are kind of set in their ways, and might be a little bit harder to change. But I found that um, having candid conversations, walking the talk, showing that you care, um, making sure that your teammates really feel like you care for them. And people know when you're being genuine and when you're not being genuine. It's that animal instinct, right? People can tell if somebody's BSing you. So it's, it's being genuine and genuinely caring. And not only do I live that in my personal life with my family and friends, but I also live that in my professional life. And I would like to say, and I would like to think that everyone would agree with me, but the culture has really, it's had a really positive impact, which is very powerful. And you can just feel it. It's palpable on the production floor, especially. People are just happy to be there. They're smiling as much as you can tell they're smiling because everyone's masked, but you can
They're
see it in the
smiling with their
eyes.
eyes. Yeah.
You can see it in the eyes, right? So
The eyes and the eyes.
um, it's really brings me a lot of joy to see folks happily working together and executing, a common goal.
Yeah. So in one of my questions was going to be, what are some of the things you had began doing within the last 18 to 24 months? But you kind of answered that when you just mentioned that you just spent more time, reading and, learning and,
Yeah.
right. And just kind of making that commitment. So I
Yep.
guess the next question that's kind of attached to that question is what what kind of outcomes have you seen, right? Like, have you seen direct results or, outcomes from your personal change? Like, have you seen that actually kind of, rippling within your workspace?
Yeah, that's a great word for it. There are definitely, I feel that there's definitely been a ripple effect.
Mhm.
Yeah, people can sense it. When you're in a leadership role, you're not your leadership is not necessarily a self-proclaimed title, right? Being a leader is something that your teammates, the just the overall team members of your company, they're the ones who decide whether or not you're a good leader, whether or not
Very
you're just
true.
even a leader.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can have manager or director in your title, but ultimately, leadership is a title. It's a role that is earned. And I feel like that is palpable throughout the company now, where I myself feel it. I feel this mutual respect, and I know our people feel it as well. And it's one thing to individually feel it. Like I went back to, there's a lot of stuff that happens, like the animal instinct, or just that natural feeling that you're cared for. But we also want to make sure that it's out there and that we try to give back. So some of the things that we've invested in are safety and ergonomic equipment. Right? We don't want to see anybody hurting themselves because a task is too hard or it can be safer. So we've invested a lot of money in automation and packaging systems that help our employees not have to lift such heavy products or packaging types of operations. And also just culturally, what can we do? Like things like employee of the month programs that we started this year, production goal lunches, right? If you break a goal, like let's celebrate, let's bring in lunch and all get to to gather and break bread together. Because I've always told my guys, there's nothing better than having a candid conversation with someone over a meal. There's
Oh,
just
yeah.
something about eating and just, I don't know, maybe it's just that it's just more free flowing. It's looser. I don't know what it is about it, but I feel like we can have much deeper conversations and more meaningful conversations when people are. Maybe it's because they're full, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you have a full stomach, right, you're usually not angry.
Mhm. Yeah. Oftentimes, I think food is a lot of people's happy place, right? And so I
Yeah,
just think it just makes it easier for, just kind of some of those walls to come down and, there to be like this true exchange of,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So we
camaraderie.
love doing those kind of things, and we're constantly looking to see how we can continue to give back to our folks here at Empire. So we're constantly thinking and brainstorming, and there's great interdepartmental communication and collaboration. So it doesn't necessarily just have to stem from operations, right? If If our IT department has a great idea for operations, like we're all ears. Like let's collaborate, let's come together, let's figure out what's best for the company, not just segmented and siloed within the departments, but overall for the entire company, because we are ultimately one team.
Yeah, yeah, and I really want to applaud you guys for achieving that sense of culture within your work environment. It's actually
Yeah.
a rare feat, especially within the industry of manufacturing and production. There's
Mhm.
just there tends to be a different type of energy or culture surrounding the work that's done, right? So
Right.
I really applaud you just for honoring the people that work and labor with you. That's amazing.
Oh,
So
thank you.
you're welcome. So my next question for you is, what's one of those things that you find yourself deeply passionate about? I think I'm hearing
Hmm.
some themes, but I'll just wait to
Yeah,
let you tell me yourself.
sure. So I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's about paying it forward, and that's personally that's what I am the most passionate about. I actually my daughter, I don't know if you can see it, but my daughter made me a bracelet,
I
and
love
it
it.
actually it says grateful on it.
Grateful. Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
she asked me, what did you want on your bracelets? So she loves like crafty and making bracelets and earrings and like loom bands and different things like that, which is great because I love to see like creation,
Mhm.
not just consumption. As our director of engineering actually said, his goal this year was to create more and consume less, and that really struck a chord with me as well. But yeah, just to create beauty and to not just be consuming, not just tangible consumption, but also like consumption like social media, right? And just trying to get away from some of the negativity or a lot of the negativity, and
Yeah.
creating something yourself, right? That get your hit of dopamine in a different form, right? It doesn't have to be on your phone. It doesn't have to be social media. It doesn't have to be Facebook or whatever you use, whatever platform it is. But going back to the bracelet, she asked me, "What did you want on your bracelet?" And I said the word grateful, because every time I look down at the bracelet now, I remind myself where I came from, not just the hard work that was required to get to the point I'm in right now, but eternally grateful that my life has panned out the way it has. And the best thing that I can do is to pay that forward. Like, what can I do now to help? One of the things that I was totally humbled by recently was a nonprofit group who reached out to me called Heartland 180, and they work with underprivileged youth in Wyandotte County. You know, youth who might need a suit for graduation, and they don't have the money to be able to afford a suit, or something as simple as shoes or a dress, right, for a homecoming dance or something like that, or just shorts and a t-shirt, right? People in need. And like I said, I was very humbled to be asked to join the board of directors for Heartland 180. So that's something that I jumped at and said, absolutely, whatever I can do, because I spend more time in Wyandotte than I do in my own county, Platte County, at home. And this is my home away from home. And a lot of the folks we employ here are from the Wyandotte County area. So what better way to give back, not just for the folks in Wyandotte County, but also it directly affects the folks who work at Empire, all of our team members. So it was a great 2-for-1 type of opportunity, right? Two birds with one stone. And we are actively looking to collaborate with Heartland 180, Empire and Heartland 180, to come up with some like food, like warm clothes and canned food drives, and donations, fundraising, just whatever we can do as a business to help out. Because ultimately, I truly feel that in order to affect positive change and to really to try to start changing the world, it starts at a much smaller level, and that is within your business, your company, your community that your business supports. That's where it starts. And um, we as a company, myself definitely, uh, we all, especially the leadership team, we all believe that, and want to continue to give back to our community.
Yeah, and I'll give the audience, the Formula Exchange audience, a little bit of context.
Okay.
So Wyandotte County, located in Kansas City, Kansas, is actually one of those areas that's kind of like the underdog dog of,
Yes.
it tends to be overlooked because of some of the socioeconomic things that happens, that has,
Yes.
just kind of generationally happened in the area. So the fact that you are conscientiously you work there and then you also, provide resources and you thoughtfully opt to figure out ways to help build up that community is pretty worthwhile, and it's a place where I'm from. So I really just applaud, I applaud what you're doing,
Oh,
it's
that's great. Yeah, I remember you telling me that, but
yeah.
I appreciate the kind words and thank you for the context. You start talking and you think, it's everything you know, but you don't realize that you're actually speaking to an audience who doesn't
Yeah.
have any context as to what does Wyandotte mean.
Yeah, what is Wyandotte? Yeah. Um, so with that said, I did kind of jot this down as you were talking because I wanted to get the wording just right. So the question
Okay.
is, what's something that people misunderstand about your ideal of, self journey and how it affects our ability to affect positive change, right? What's the
Yeah.
interplay? Like, does it have to be there in order to affect change, or is it just a
Yeah.
nice have? Like, in your experience.
Yeah. So this goes back to controlling what you can control
Mhm.
and, walking the talk and the whole concept of being genuine. If you are genuinely not trying to better yourself or to improve yourself, but you talk a big game or you're trying to affect positive change when you don't
Mhm.
necessarily exude that, it feels very disingenuous. It feels like, well, that person talks a lot but doesn't really do much. So I didn't want to necessarily try to affect positive change without trying to affect positive change within myself. So when I first started on this journey, I said to myself, I can absolutely be a better person. I'm at a different stage in my life, right? People change over time, and different circumstances, environment, pandemic effect, right? That has really changed people's perspectives and has, I would say, more so divided the country more than ever now. So what can I control? And that is myself, and that continued education to me is more important to make sure that you know what your why is. Why do I want to do what I want to do? What is my purpose here now? And once I figured that out, that paying it forward is my purpose, taking care of our team members is my purpose, because financial success for the business, that's just a result, in my opinion. And financial result can be positive and most times will be positive and will be successful as long as the people feel like they're cared for. So, in order for me to really exude that and try to explain that to our folks, I had to myself become that person that would be the ideal fit for the culture that I was trying to create, for our, at least for our operational team, but really for the entire Empire organization. So it starts with yourself. I really think it's hard to affect positive change if you yourself are not 100% sure what you want to be, why you're doing it. Um, and I think the order is that comes first, and then take those learnings and try to pay it forward and try to affect positive change out there, to your local community, right? Things that are more within your control. Maybe not as much control as yourself, but definitely more control than let's try to impact the entire world, right? Like little steps at a time, little changes at a time.
So I think I hear you mentioning how an introspective shift allows you to actually be able to be more and do more and give more, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
s- yeah. So for you, what has been a bright spot for you in that journey, and really what I guess is in your journey of building more meaningful relationships with yourself and with other
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. So we earlier this year we wanted to establish a baseline. What is our culture like? We don't really know. Anecdotally, you hear, right? Like, oh yeah, I like working here, or yeah, it's okay, it's just a job, right? You hear these things, but you don't really know how people really feel. So we actually did collaborate with Chapman and Co. and conducted a culture survey for our entire company. And I would say that was one of the bright spots, especially in terms of operationally. Um, a lot of folks really enjoyed working here or do enjoy working here. A lot of folks had a lot of positive things to say. Definitely opportunities, which is great. But I would say the bright spot really has been the ability for our folks to feel like they're cared for and for them to feel safe enough to come back to us with suggestions or opportunities, not just have growing resentment because, oh, they don't care about that, so I'm not going to even bring it up. Um, they feel safe enough to be able to have conversations and conversations with anybody on the management team, the executive, leadership team. People are welcome to have those candid conversations respectfully, obviously, right? You don't want to approach it in a mean way, but uh, yeah, and that has been really a bright spot is the cultural shift, the joy that you see out there, and the better communication. I think that was our number one opportunity as a company, was better communication, which is such a broad term, right? What does better communication really mean? Um, but to me, it was just uh, being there and listening, right? Like with intent, right? Not just hearing what they say and not doing anything with it, but really listening deeply, like listening with the intent to understand, with the intent to learn. And what do you guys need? How can we help you guys out? And that back and forth communication has been much better, I would say, in the last 6 to 8 months. So still a work in progress, but at least we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, David, I'm really thinking about all of those places I worked ever in my life that had unique cultural issues, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And, you know, uh, and sometimes, people mean well, people in leadership mean well, but they just don't have the
yep,
tools to just, to fix it or, it effect change, right?
yes,
So
yes,
I really kind of hear you saying that it kind of starts within. Um,
yeah,
and then there's this expression of outward positive behavior, right?
yeah,
Um,
yep,
what's been one of the most significant things that you've learned with that approach? Because that's a little different, Usually we have
sure,
people try to use, the disciplinary route to change the
yeah,
culture, and then that
yeah,
creates that resentment that you mentioned. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah.
It's what we were saying to our folks, and what we're still trying to eliminate is this fear that making a mistake means you might get terminated.
Mhm.
People shouldn't fear losing their job over making a mistake. I mean, we're all human,
Of
and
course.
I feel the opportunity to show more empathy is really that opportunity. Put yourself in that person's shoes. If you made that mistake, how would you want to be treated, right? Would you want to be heard, right? How would you better react to it if a manager came to you and said, "Hey, let's figure this out. How did this happen?" Instead of being reprimanded or written up. I mean, like, obviously there are times when write-ups are necessary, but that shouldn't be the first go-to. Like I said, people, humans, right? They make human mistakes. Not all humans are not perfect. So it's to give them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt and to work and that's just a coaching opportunity, additional training opportunity, in my opinion. It's not an opportunity to reprimand. It's an opportunity to learn together and for your teammate to be better in that regard, and not necessarily fear that, oh no, I made a mistake. I can't tell anybody and try to hide it. And then usually what happens is it's just gets worse, or
And
it's a small issue turns out to be it turns into a big issue. But having that having the team members understand that they have a safe space and they can trust that when there is an issue, they can bring it up to management. The first question isn't who did that, how did that happen, right? Who's going to get written up for that? It's a softer approach, like, hey, how did this happen? But let's try to figure this out together, and let's try to figure out together how we can prevent this from happening next time, right? And because more times than not, people aren't doing it maliciously, right? People aren't making mistakes or on purpose. It's a genuine accident. So people make mistakes, and we're all human, and we need to cut each other a little bit of slack.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift our conversation just a little bit because
Sure.
I hear you speaking to not only leaders, just kind of through example, but
Mhm.
also to people who are not in leadership positions or who may be leading from the sidelines.
Sure.
So my question to you would be, in the event that we happen to find ourselves in a space or a culture that isn't the most positive, right?
Hmm.
How can we, what's your formula? What's your personal formula that you can share with us for how we can be, good people and um, demonstrate positive outward behavior despite the environments that we may find ourselves in?
Despite the environment, that's tough. That's really
It
tough.
is.
I'm in a fortunate position where I am in a leadership position, and leadership meaning not by the definition we spoke to earlier, but higher, let's say, executive leadership team, right? Just a general term. Um, but going back to your thought on being a leader or leading from the sidelines, anybody can step up and be a leader, right? It's not about the title that you have. It's not you don't have to be the CEO of a company or overseeing all of operations in order to be a leader or a good leader. I see leadership on the floor all the time, from people who had just started with us, right? They just exude this energy and this positivity, to some people who have been here a long time and just know how to um, really, what do I want to say, motivate people, and
Mm,
to um, and just exude that, right? Because like I said earlier, leadership is it's an earned title, and people may not use the term leader like necessarily on the floor, but they understand what that feels like when they interact with those particular people. So I would say, in an environment or a culture that may not necessarily fit, right, you really have just three options. The first option is to accept the circumstances, and that's what you're going to have to live with. And the second is leave that situation. Like, I can't accept this. I need to leave. And really, I feel like the only other option is to um, try to affect positive change. And again, that is very tough in a culture, and let's call it a negative culture or a less than ideal culture. That is very, very tough, to just start that, right? Especially when it's you're not in a leader or a titled leadership, a management position, let's call it. That's very hard to start, but it's, I think, every single person. Uh, what we ask all of our team members is, we just want you guys to show up to work, find joy in what you're doing, have a good time, try your best, be kind to each other. That's really all we ask. Everything else we can teach you, right? Candle making is it's an old process, right? It's pretty simple. I mean, candles have been around for centuries, so we can teach pretty much anyone how to make a candle. But what we really look for are the character, right? Like, can I see you growing into leadership roles, into leadership positions with the company? And those are the folks that you want to be on the lookout for. But in a culture that's less than ideal, it's do your own part, I guess, is the only thing I can really say.
that's
And if you can't accept it, then you got to leave it. And if you don't want to leave, then you got to try to change it. And it starts with candid conversations. That is so much harder to do, though, when you are a lone wolf and you're by yourself, or if you just started with the company, right? That's even harder. Or if you don't have the clout, let's call it, right? You don't have a management title. It just makes it harder and harder. But again, it all goes back to, what can you control? And all I ask for people is to control yourself and try to be the best version of yourself on any given day. Because if everyone tries to be the best version of themselves, or the optimal version of themselves every single day, I mean, the world would be such a better place.
I believe you. And I agree with you totally. So I have two remaining questions for you. The
Sure.
first one is, to just for the sake of connecting the dots for the
Hmm.
listeners,
Sure.
what do you, in our conversation, what's the biggest takeaway that our audience should walk away with from our conversation?
So, what I would like our audience to take away is, I guess, two things. Work on yourselves, try to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And if you ever get fortunate enough that you find success, whatever definition that is for you personally, to try to pay it forward
Yeah.
however you can.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. I love it. And so my final question and my favorite question of all podcasts
Uh-huh.
is what can the Formula Exchange audience do to help you on your journey?
To help
To
my
help
journey, you
you
said?
to help you on your journey. Yes.
To help me on my journey. I love feedback. I love having conversations. I'm always trying to learn. Um, I think, especially during the last 2 years with the pandemic environment, there have been less opportunities to have these sort of face-to-face conversations and learning to take place. And Zoom is great. These opportunities make it much better than just on the phone, right? Makes it more personal, but there is nothing like sitting even 6 feet away from somebody in person and having those conversations. And um, but at the same time, we do what we can do given the circumstances. So I would love any sort of feedback, any opportunities, further discussions. I am always open to learn. So, for our audience, if anybody wants to have continued conversations or want to use me as a sounding board, or if I can use somebody as a sounding board based on different interactions, that is really what I want is to establish a community through your guys' platform as a vehicle to try to help people or guide people to certain professionals or just people in general who can maybe have those conversations with them and hopefully can help.
Yeah, perfect. So there you have it. If you would like to connect with David, head to the Formula Exchange website and you'll find his information. You can reach out to him, ask questions. We learned that he loves to read. So if you're reading a good book and you would like to share it with him, go ahead and connect with him. David, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insight. I've taken so many notes and I find some areas I've through your conversation, I have found some areas that I can just kind of use myself. So thank you for sharing,
Awesome.
yourself with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Perfect. All right. Take care.